my voice doesn't give out because I lost it recently. I'm very happy to say that I had a reunion, thanks to Facebook, with a friend, and we hadn't been in touch for 25 years. So he was looking for me and I was looking for him, but it's very hard to find someone when you don't know where they are in the world. So I was compelled to write the story. It's called The Garden of Eden. Over the past 25 years, I often wondered what had become of my adorable, sunny, forever smiling friend, Ralph Chouette Glass, every time I looked at a Cordyline australianus in a park or in a garden. Why, you might ask, and with good reason. In the 1980s, I bought an Edwardian house at 164 Kensington Park Road, Notting Hill, from the famous creator of the Biba Empire, Barbara Hulanicki, and her husband Fritz. "Shall we call it Biba House?" I foolishly asked my magical husband, Martin Breese. "Don't be so pretentious," was his abrupt reply. Barbara set sail for Miami, influencing hotel interiors and becoming the catalyst for the gentrification of South Beach, while I set about creating a step-back-in-time atmosphere in my eclectic world, befitting my lifestyle as a full-time antique collectibles dealer. The photo archive cum library Retrograph was created later through happenstance, but I just wanted to concentrate on the decor of the house with its overgrown garden, untended by Barbara, who had no time as she was running her fashion empire. First, I brought the outside tiled balcony inside the house, building an extension using a free wall, thanks to our architect neighbour Richard Bird, to which I added two antique French glass bistro doors, double glazed with moths and flowers pressed between the heavy glass, that I'd brought over from Paris. Next, I designed a mirrored, dark green painted conservatory overlooking the bare garden with plain grey brick high wall, which was at the back of the Dolphin Arcade in Portobello Road, famous for its flea market. Outside on the tiled veranda, Ralph later built a wooden arbour which over the years groaned with juicy black grapes, giving an authentic Mediterranean feel. We would sit outside in the summer on the veranda, sipping herbal teas, accompanied by lokum, overlooking the garden, and my cats, Rumba and Tango. I had grand ideas for this boring garden with raised borders, but no gardener. I was not green-fingered, although I had imagination, but no practical knowledge of plants for shady areas or type of soil. However, I had always loved tropical swaying palm trees and architectural plants, an influence from my exotic time spent in Brazil from 1970 to 71. I would wander down to the flower stall at the corner, Tom's Flowers, the owner being Tom Vash, a tall, larger-than-life German character. I had struck up a friendship with his ex-partner, fellow Liverpudlian Bill, and would hang out with my mate Bill on the windy, uncomfortable corner with nowhere to sit. Later, dear Bill would tragically die from smoke inhalation after he had set fire to his flat, having fallen asleep after smoking a joint. A sad loss to our neighbourhood, and later, after Ralph's sudden departure, Rob Cassie would become my gardening consultant before his untimely tragic death decades later when he was found dead in bed from sclerosis of the liver. Yes, gardens and exotic plants were on my mind when I encountered the young, good-looking flower seller on Tom's gusty corner called Ralph Chouette Glass, a name and a handsome face to remember for decades to come. Young Ralph seemed to have an extraordinary knowledge about life, plants, herbs, flowers, alternative medicine, not to mention the human body for his age. We became instant friends and garden colleagues. Ralph often came round to advise me about the potential for my garden. And we would sit in my Bieber-style kitchen after his long, hard, grueling day with aching, swollen, wet hands from cutting flowers and making displays for Tom's blooming business. Harper and Tom's was supplying Buckingham Palace, and so had a royal warrant proudly displayed in his tiny shop. Today I would have interviewed Ralph about his background and how come he arrived in London speaking no English, but in a couple of months was speaking like a native, adding to his command of excellent spoken English to French, Italian, German, Russian, and Serbian. All I gleaned was that he was born in St. Petersburg to a beautiful Russian model and an aristocratic French father. However, his mother abandoned him, marrying a German politician, and the infant was shunted off to Serbia to live with his aunt. Poor Ralph, there was an inheritance dispute as he was illegitimate at a time when it was a social stigma. Thus, poor Ralph was forever broke and lost the court case against his evil German politician stepfather, who absconded to Australia with his sister after his mother's death, with what would have been part of Ralph's inheritance. I soon discovered my multi-talented gardener was a bel canto opera singer, so that he was not just a pretty face. He revealed he'd studied at the Robert Schumann Institute in Dusseldorf and had won first prize in a singing competition he'd seen advertised by chance in the Evening Standard in visiting London from Dusseldorf. Young Ralph, through this unique happenstance, left the Dusseldorf Opera House that offered him a career and studied in London privately with David Harper, a known British opera coach, receiving a small grant in trendy Notting Hill. Hence, to make ends meet out of desperation, he worked close by, day in, day out, for Tom's Flowers, on the black market, of course. Despite not being interested in opera, nevertheless, Martin and I were invited one evening to Craxton House in Kidderport Avenue, Hampstead, for a musical salon to hear and support our young friends sing. The Craxton Memorial Trust helped young musical talent, and Ralph, of course, was deeply involved. One day, he noticed an abandoned house that was going to be demolished, which had architectural plants in the garden. Why not take the plants for Madame Jilliana's budding garden? A large Cordyline australianis was thus stolen and transported by Ralph by midnight with his best friend Yeti, costing me a mere £40. So that would be about 1984. The boys planted it in a pivotal position where it grew and grew and grew. After some research, it was later discovered that the old Portobello River went through my garden, and thus its roots obviously found the water. The magnificent tree thrived, growing higher and higher, blocking out any sunlight we got in the microclimate of London W11. Ralph was the catalyst for my architectural garden. After that, he found and planted red star and pink passion cordylines, ivy and passion flowers on the back of the wall, which bore orange succulent fruit. The ugly wall was transformed into an evergreen jungle with a large hand-painted mirror stolen from another building tip, adding reflection, light and depth to my flourishing perennial tropical garden. Actually, it's a bit long. Should I continue?
Just a little bit more, and then.
Okay. Oh gosh. Ralph advised and added a large Fatsia japonica bush which thrived, and in the flower bed alongside my neighbour's garden he planted a date palm. I was in Tropicala heaven playing bossa nova by my favourite artists such as Jobim, Vinicius, Gal Costa, Caetano and Chico. I was extremely proud of my garden, although I can't say I tended it. I was the madame of the manor. It was time for Ralph to move on and leave Tom's Flowers, where he was being exploited, and move to Sweden, where he sung and proudly presented me with his Gothic CD. I only saw him once after he moved to Sweden. He was very speedy and must have been on medication. He had a wild look in his eyes and raced up to me in Portobello Road, knowing that I would be there. He was in a panic and had rung the doorbell to say farewell. Not the Ralph I knew and was fond of. Apparently his best friend and business partner had absconded with all their hard-earned cash from a landscaping garden venture. Then he sped off, leaving the UK forever, and all I got was one postcard from Madrid with no phone number, only the address of a theatre he was performing in. Silence, nada. The years sped on, the decades flew past. I looked under his full name and came across the Swedish bel canto music he had recorded in Sweden, but no other reference. One media directory listed him as an actor. I gave up. He could no longer be in perhaps no longer be in Spain, no longer alive. How do you search the universe for someone? Social platforms like Facebook had not been born, nor mobile phones. Years later, I still searched, as I still had a good photo of him the afternoon we went to Caxton House. I had not thought of Facebook, only Google, and as always, surfing the net with his middle name. Nada. Until yesterday, when I received a friend request on Facebook, out of the blue, from a Ralph Glass, without the chouette, 25 years later, and the day before his 60th birthday. And he's living in the north of Spain, and I hope to see him next year.